Yeah. I'm curious, like what is you guys' like economic ideology? Like what do you guys consider yourselves to be?
No, we're hardcore capitalists. No.
Well, that's an interesting question, and I've thought a lot about what I call myself or identify as, and I kind of have an ever evolving, sense of that because in my heart of hearts, to be honest, and I've said this on the show, I do feel like I'm an anarcho communist. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But I also feel like it's difficult to express anarcho communist values in a society that's as rigidly capitalist as ours. Like you have to participate in capitalism to some extent, unless you are wealthy enough yourself to literally buy a commune and grow your own food and stuff like that, which, like I said, takes money to do. So, participating in capitalism and, obviously what Zach and I do technically is a business, right? It's hard to label yourself as an anarcho-communist because I don't want to be like one of
Yeah.
these, internet LARPers.
Yeah, you can shout whatever you want from the top of a mountain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I do feel like a lot of internet lefty culture is just that. It's a subculture. It's a niche. It's a club. It's a fan club, whatever. People are like, I'm a anarcho-communist or whatever. But like, what does that really fucking mean again in America? So I just feel like it's kind of disingenuous to identify myself as that. So generally, I just call myself a socialist or a leftist populist.
Yeah, that's kind of where I follow myself as well. Gavin articulated my sentiments. I share them. But yeah, I guess for the most part, I just call myself a socialist, right? Like, I think that's the best way to articulate like my priorities in an easy, understandable way, or a leftist or whatever. And, I used to call myself a progressive a lot more, although that word doesn't mean anything now. So, I think people, if you tell them that you're a socialist, although, I mean, that obviously every word comes with, associations that like maybe I don't agree with, right? Like obviously Gavin and I are pretty like hard line on free speech. Like, we don't support censorship. So, like the lines get murky on like, oh, I guess we didn't define these labels. So, the labels can't 100% define us.
Yeah. And also with like I said, I feel like ultimately I am an anarcho-capitalist, but again, I feel like socialism
an anarcho-communist.
Sorry, an anarcho-communist, you know what I'm saying? But I do feel like socialism is the necessary step between capitalism and communism. So again, I don't just want to call myself a communist when that's really has no basis in our current reality. Do you know what I'm saying, Franco?
And people also
Yeah, it's like the end goal.
authoritarian
That's what communism
you're
is
talking
supposed
about.
to be.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it can be interesting. And I feel like to some extent, even politicians fall into this trap because again, people that are running for office want to call themselves a socialist, but they're entering a capitalist system that they do not have the power to change into a socialist system. So it does kind of set people's expectations to be like, where's the socialism? Like, why aren't you giving me socialism?
It's not there.
And you're like, we do live in a capitalist system, unfortunately. Let's change that ASAP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've also abandoned the label progressive because it's been overused by people who I don't consider progressive from the idea that I thought it was. Yeah, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi calls herself a progressive. TYT calls themselves progressive. Like people who defend the establishment. And I consider defending AOC defending the establishment because she's a part of it, and she also defends corporate Democrats. So
and gave them money.
Yeah, and what we just found out also recently, her funneling money to these corporate Democrats. So I've abandoned that term.
Yeah.
Sure.
I remember when Hillary Clinton said that she was the more progressive candidate in 2016.
Oh God.
Yeah. And then also she was the outsider because she's a woman.
I mean, I'm still like on my journey to discovery of like what I really am.
I think that's a constant thing, right?
Yeah. So I don't really label myself anything, but I definitely lean socialist. I mean, I talk to a lot of Marxist-Leninists and Maoists. I also talk to libertarians, leftist libertarians and I agree a lot with their ideas on civil liberties. I mean, there's a lot that we can agree with libertarians on.
I would consider myself a leftist libertarian as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said it on your show also, like when I appeared for the debate, I more so consider myself like a post-partisan leftist who leans socialist.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way to summarize your politics and articulate it though in an effective way, which I think is the best case scenario for when we define ourselves, kind of to piggyback on what Gavin was saying about like just calling yourself whatever and not necessarily being able to live those tactics. It's like Vosh calls himself an anarcho, people who are not actually fighting for things like anarcho-syndicalism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh shit, I'm getting some bad feedback over at Rockfin. Oh, well, I'll fix it later. But yeah, 100%, guys. Do you guys feel like labels have been like dividing people recently? Like people get too distracted with it, and then
I mean, I guess it could be an issue. I don't know. I don't pay attention to too much of that kind of stuff. So maybe Gavin, you're better to answer that.
I was just gonna say that I feel like it's only something that people like me that are like obsessively into this kind of shit even care about. Like most people don't even, I mean, obviously if you say communism to some rando, they're gonna have connotations, but like I don't really think most people are as hung up on the labels as some people in this space are, because it does get pretty like anal where you're like, Jesus Christ, like chill out, like okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, one thing I really like about you guys and your channel is that you guys said that you'd be happy to talk to anybody. And that should be the whole purpose of independent media, is to try to unite with everybody, and try to find common ground with people, because that's how we're going to help each other grow, right? As opposed to arguing with people, punching down or punching left, or we all share a common enemy, right? So
yeah, exactly.
What the heck is the point of arguing so much and taking so much to heart ideological differences when we don't even have a government that represents us right now? We should really be focused on uniting.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that, I mean, obviously, Gavin, I mean, like, you're going to have disagreements with people you're talking to if you talk to everybody. But yeah, I think that opening the door for dialogue and being willing to engage is the thing that has to be there, right? Is that you have to be willing to articulate your position, and you have to be able to do so effectively if you ever want to expand your coalition, right? We're talking about coalition building. How are you going to do that if you're only in an echo chamber, right? Like, you can never grow that way. You might stay pure in your minds, right? But it's kind of like, okay, like, and also just I think to echo another point, it's like, there's a fine line between like disagreeing with somebody and then like having them on your show to be an asshole. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a balance that you have to find as a content creator, right? Because you don't want to create a space where you're just being a fucking dickhead to somebody that took the time to come on your program. But it's also like, if we have massive disagreements, like, we have to air them. And
actually, Franco, I think that's something that your show has done just so excellently well. Like, you've done that expertly a couple times on your program, especially when you had on Matt Skidmore, the Yang Ganger guy. Like, I thought you just had such a impressively restrained and respectful conversation, but you were still, had tough questions. It was still, there's some tension in the interview, some disagreements, different viewpoints being expressed. But it's not like the point was to embarrass anybody. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I have my disagreements with Yang. I have and Yang supporters, but I'm not gonna like hate them for that. I'm gonna at the same time, I'm gonna be honest about those disagreements. 100%. Like Yang's stances on foreign policy, his support for the war in Syria, his support for Israel, like, I'm gonna voice that. And if you support Yang, you better be prepared to defend that. And also understand like why I'm criticizing him. But yeah, props to Matt also for coming on the show and not just discussing with me, but the person who I had on before, who was making the case for why he sees Andrew Yang as problematic for New York as a New York resident